Bene, ciao a tutti, benvenuti. È stato un attimo di ritardo perché non appariva il player sul sito. Ho detto, boh, forse l'hanno rimandato o forse l'hanno fatto ieri, visto che hanno rilasciato tutto ieri in anteprima. Ho detto, magari hanno fatto ieri e noi siamo arrivati 24 ore in ritardo. Però adesso il video c'è, quindi tra poco inizia la keynote. Oggi grande watch party con personaggi di livello, tra cui, vado in ordine di importanza, Enos. E poi c'è Daniele Bocchi. Abbiamo chiamato Enos per un motivo in realtà, perché io e Daniele, come sapete, non sapeva più niente, sapeva più programmare, fa niente, mi ha chiamato uno che ne sa, giusto Daniele? No, più o meno
giusto.
questo.
Nella vita bisogna sempre circondarsi di persone che sono più capaci di te, se no non impari.
Esattamente.
Continuiamo con questa
Credo che possa confermare anche Andrea Santarello, che infatti ha assunto Enos, l'ha fatto apposta. Ha detto, tanto possiamo parlare male di Andrea, tanto non ci ascolta, lo so per certo, perché sta facendo la puntata di Cloud Champions, quindi possiamo parlarne male, non riguarderà mai la registrazione, ma anche se conoscendolo forse potrebbe riguardarla, per vedere come ci siamo comportati, però vabbè. Comunque siamo qua a guardare il lancio di .NET 6. Ieri abbiamo già assistito al lancio di Visual Studio, con dentro anche .NET 6, quindi più smanettoni, io compreso, l'ho installato e ho fatto anche un nuovo progetto .NET 6, anche se l'avevo già fatto in realtà con la preview, però fa sempre più figo farlo con la preview e l'RC.
Io al solito ho messo tutti i nostri servizi in produzione live con .NET 6 il giorno di lancio e devo dire che per il momento funziona tutto. Viva la telemetria che ci dice ovviamente se qualcosa non va.
Sì, chiaro.
Però
ma funzionare. Ci hanno abituato bene, onestamente, negli ultimi anni a questa cosa qua. Cioè, che quando rilasciano da .NET Core in poi, parlo.
Sì.
Forse dalla 2.1, mi verrebbe da dire, dalla 2.1 in poi. 2.1, 3.0, 3.1.
Anche la 2.2 è stata una bella release.
Anche la 2.2, sì, io dicevo sì, da 2.1 in poi dicevo tutto quello che è venuto dopo, insomma. Hanno sempre rilasciato cose che funzionano la prima, ecco, invece forse scottati un po' dal passato quando è uscito il .NET Framework.
Tra l'altro la cosa carina è che già sia su Azure che su AWS c'è il supporto, quindi
sì.
Si riesce già ad andare senza fare giri strani e che poi ovviamente il runtime ha una qualità secondo me nettamente superiore ai tool, cioè se doveste trovare un sacco di robe che non vanno in Visual Studio 2022 le abbiamo trovate un po' tutti. La qualità di Visual Studio si è un po' abbassata secondo me, o perlomeno avendo scelto di rifarlo così tanto forse hanno sottostimato un po' l'effort, per cui lo trovo di una qualità più veloce da aprirsi, più bello, però poi il codice
però delle belle icone,
sì, esatto. Anche
il
il
tema
colore mi
scuro.
piace. No, anche lo schema di colori a me piace, però poi magari non. Però il runtime invece è una qualità molto elevata, devo dire che ormai.
Tra l'altro questo .NET 6 è la versione LTS, quindi in teoria dovrebbe durare degli anni.
Tre anni.
Esatto, quindi non credo che sia quello il motivo, perché anche la 5 comunque era buona, non è che allora la 5 ha detto, vabbè, tanto deve durare un anno, chi se ne frega. Però essendo un LTS dovrebbe essere un po' più, viene da dire, testata, ora non so se è la parola giusta, ma quello sì. Ripeto, mi aspetto la stessa cosa per la 7, onestamente, perché però come dici te, nei tool, a parte Visual Studio Code, onestamente, quando esce la versione nuova di solito è sempre una roba decente. Con i Visual Studio, si ricorda anche il 2019, appena era uscito, dopo una settimana rilasciarono la 16.1, una roba del genere, dopo poco, lasciarono subito un aggiornamento, e lo faranno anche col 2022 sicuramente. Fra una settimana mi aspetto la 17.1, ma che però, se ci pensi, visto che Daniele anche te hai un po' più anni o meglio, che si lavora più o meno, abbiamo lo stesso, abbiamo iniziato quasi uguale, te qualche anno prima, ma più o meno Enos mi sa che iniziavo dopo. Però se ti ricordi, prima, quando c'era tipo Visual Basic, bisognava aspettare un anno per aggiornamenti, anche se qualcosa non andava con i CD dell'MSDN. Almeno adesso abbiamo la fortuna. Sì. Esatto, almeno adesso abbiamo la fortuna che update.
Ma infatti secondo me
è pregio difetto. secondo me.
La nuova punto 1 la rilasciano veramente a breve, perché insomma un tot di robe non vanno.
Sì, infatti. No, come dice Enos, poi sono d'accordo con Enos, un po' la fortuna e la sfortuna, perché molto probabilmente dicono, anche se non siamo prontissimi, usciamo. Ora ripeto, prima che non voglio parlare male di Visual Studio di Microsoft, perché in realtà hanno sempre fatto della roba perfetta, però come dice Daniele, ultimamente le prime versioni di tutte e due dei tool, perché con Daniele Runtime, SDK, niente da dire, però dei tool un po' così, forse perché ogni volta ripartono da zero, potrebbe essere quello il motivo, perché nel 2022 hanno fatto un nuovo progetto, hanno messo il nome Microsoft.Visual Studio 2022, hanno fatto anche loro come si fa noi, quindi forse non hanno abbastanza tempo, non lo so, è la mia assumption. Comunque hanno 2 anni alla fine di tempo di sviluppo.
O forse comunque questo prodotto è figlio della pandemia, nel male, si lavora in maniera diversa. Non so quante volte si siano visti di persona e vuoi o non vuoi, comunque fai più difficoltà, insomma, a lavorare in maniera totalmente distribuita. Quindi,
sì, no, quello assolutamente.
Ci possono essere diversi punti, secondo me. Speriamo che però migliorino in maniera abbastanza veloce. Io credo che sia questo il punto. Va bene in questo momento.
Da tenere in conto che c'è anche il passaggio a 64 bit, quindi anche tutte finestre, plugin e quant'altro devono ricorrere, quindi...
Sì, è vero anche quello. La sentite voi la musica per caso del mio schermo? Bassa?
Basta.
Sì, bassa, ma la sentiamo.
Sì, ho abbassato io il volume, se no non ci sentiamo noi. Allora, quello, prendete 64 bit è un bel salto in avanti. Ora, io non so se è quello o perché Visual Studio nuovo, sul mio book 3 dove l'ho installato, va molto più veloce, onestamente. Non so se è 64 bit o no, non lo so. Sicuramente aiuta, però ho visto che va molto veloce e mi sembra che in realtà ho letto che occupa tante più memoria, a me mi sembra che in realtà ne occupi meno. Però ho aperto un progetto che
allora, secondo me c'è certamente del memory leak da qualche parte, perché se apri tanti file, io quando scrivo codice tendenzialmente lo faccio aprendo una solution che poi magari tengo aperta davvero per tutto il giorno e vedo che dopo un po', tipo 4-5 ore, incomincia ad arrancare, però niente che non si possa risolvere riavviando, insomma. Quindi...
Sì. Poi io sul book 3 guardavo la RAM apposta, perché insomma avevo letto ieri dei post in cui la gente diceva occupa più di prima e tutto, ho detto tengo sotto controllo, sì. Però mi sembrava, magari avevo io era un progetto Blazor su cui ho lavorato oggi a maggior parte del tempo, e una Splendid NBC, quindi magari ho avuto anch'io la fortuna. E io, però a differenza tua, ecco, non tengo tanti file aperti onestamente, cioè io lavoro su 1, 2 massimo e poi li chiudo perché mi viene l'ansia. Potrebbe essere anche quello lì, in modo diverso.
No, anche dopo un po' li chiudo, non sono amante di 1000 tab aperti in generale, però se ne apri 100 e poi li chiudi, fa memory leak, quindi quanti ne hai aperti singolarmente, non quanti ne
Sì, no, pensavo tenere aperti fissi, no. Adesso...
E poi è imbarazzante che praticamente crasha l'autocompletion dell'HTML, vabbè che siamo rimasti in 10 a scrivere in HTML nel mondo, però...
sì, ma almeno 2 sono qua, non so non so te, ma...
No, ma era una battuta, ormai credo che tutti scrivano un pezzetto, cioè anche se fai un'applicazione magari più di front-end e usi Visual Studio, scriverai sta HTML, quindi mi sembra assurdo che in tutte le review l'autocompletion dell'HTML sia spaccato e non l'abbiano ancora fissato, però vabbè, ci arriveranno. La telemetria, adesso che incominciamo a usarlo tutti, gli sparerà 10 miliardi di errori e magari salirà nella priorità, spero.
Sì, quello,
perché è imbarazzante, insomma.
Quello me l'ha fatto anche a me oggi diverse volte, onestamente, soprattutto su Blazor, ovviamente mi faceva il primo e poi dopo non me lo faceva più.
Sì, crash, l'unico modo è riavviare Visual Studio.
Sì, ho provato anche a riavviare vari servizi, sai, quelli dietro, US Host, quelli, ma niente. Mi sa che stanno per partire, no, non stanno per partire. Quanto manca? Manca poco però, un paio di minuti.
Sì, mancano un paio di minuti.
Quindi oggi un po' di curiosità su quello che c'è. Cioè, ce l'ho onestamente, un po' di curiosità su quello che diranno.
Novità, cose che non sappiamo non ce ne sono, credo. Cioè, hanno tirato già fuori tutto. Però...
Ecco, la cosa che mi inquieta è quella che hanno detto ieri, non so, mi ricordo se hanno detto ieri o l'ho letta, adesso che faccio confusione, ma l'ho provata sulle mie mani, sulle mie ossa oggi, che se hai un progetto Blazor 5, dicono puoi aggiornarlo, figo, però se vuoi utilizzare tutte le feature di .NET 6, fai un progetto vuoto, nuovo, e ci copi i file dentro. Bene. È da documentazione così, C'è proprio il paragrafo bello. Quello è proprio adesso non ce l'ho sotto mano, ma
no, è dentro il post ufficiale. È nel post ufficiale
è nel post ufficiale della documentazione, sì. Quello un po' mi ha lasciato un po'. È strano, perché di solito c'è sempre, visto la guida per aggiornare, no? Da ASP.NET 3.1 a 5.0, cambi 3 file, fai un po' di magheggi, prendi un rosario, più o meno ce la fai. Questa volta ho detto, ma vabbè. Però nonostante che
non ci sono tantissime breaking changes, quindi si riesce abbastanza facilmente a aggiornare i progetti. Però questo fatto che Blazor deve rifarlo da zero anche a me ha lasciato un po' perplesso. Non ho indagato troppo perché
non ho capito, vuol dire che a quel punto scrivono qualcosa che te non sai da qualche parte, perché altrimenti se fosse da cambiare anche il CS Proj, no? Per dire della situazione, no? Anche se fosse da stravolgere tutto, va bene, è sempre meglio che copiare tutti i file, no? Invece no, avevo detto fare un nuovo progetto con lo stesso nome alla vecchia maniera, no? E poi copi la roba. Però ora è anche vero che non credo che tutti abbiano un progetto Blazor in produzione, non sono tanti. Se 10 sono quelli che scrivono HTML, saremo 12. Ciao Andrea, vai che il tuo commento sarà sicuramente benvenuto. Sì, Andrea invece ci stava spiando, non ci siamo accorti, ci stava spiando, chi l'ho offeso ma se ne è accorto, quindi domani mi sa che mi bacchetta, però dettagli adesso però ho iniziato la sua sessione sicuramente, quindi no, alle 5, sì, alle 5, cioè dalle 5 alle 6, sì, quindi va bene così. Qua hanno messo il logo intanto .NET Conf, quindi secondo me potrebbero anche partire.
Sì.
Te Daniele devi scappare alle 6, giusto? Se mi ricordo bene.
Sì, anche qualche minuto prima, sì, ma tanto secondo me tempo mezz'ora si esaurisce tutto qua, non c'è niente di... A parte questo bellissimo video dei vecchi...
Metto,
Vai.
Something that broke a lot of new ground. You can see a lot changed. It's been an incredible journey to get where we are today.
It started in the community. This is an experience.
I'm saying we have people from all over joining us.
Every developer can actually develop any application super productively for any platform. Pretty cool.
It's almost like science fiction how far it's come.
This is only the start.
The Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Science. They are using .NET to deliver a multi-device streaming service to their Academy members.
Cross-platform mobile apps.
.NET is open source and it runs everywhere.
You're at this powerful cockpit of all the things from production, editing, popular.
We're shoot to serve. What we want is to make developers happy.
Woo! Simple as that.
I would say get involved.
Take you up with your feedback.
Congrats on another amazing .NET Conf.
Welcome to .NET Conf 2021. I'm Scott Hunter, the VP of Product at Microsoft on Azure and .NET, and I'm excited to be here today to share all the cool things we built with the community and .NET 6. First off, .NET 6 is a unified platform. That's one SDK, one runtime, one set of base libraries to build all these crazy app types, whether it's cloud, web, desktop, mobile, gaming, IoT, or AI. Once you learn .NET and you build one of these workloads, you can then build all of them with the same skills. And it goes beyond that. We also have amazing tools. You can use Visual Studio family of tools to build .NET applications with .NET 6.
C'è anche un typo sulla slide, non so se vedete. Hanno scritto libraries.
If you want to drop down to the CLI and do everything from the terminal, you can do that. .NET is very flexible. We have an amazing ecosystem of packages, thousands and thousands of packages out there that you can build your apps with. There's a ton of amazing projects in GitHub.
Aspetta che ti dico se anche sull'originale è così.
Build tech on top of .NET. So it's a huge ecosystem, completely unified in .NET 6. Now let's talk about the momentum of our ecosystem. We have over 5.4 million developers using .NET every day in the Visual
Studio.
Anche
sull'originale.
Oh, perfect.
We have been the most loved framework in the Stack Overflow Developer Survey for 3 years in a row. And the Cloud Native Foundation measures the highest velocity projects in GitHub, and you're going to see that .NET has been in the top 30 for many, many years. Now, even cooler, we have over 6.9K community contributors outside of Microsoft that have contributed over 21,000 contributions. And so that's an amazing effort, considering that we only open sourced .NET back in 2014. And so I want to step back and say thank you to all of those contributors for helping us drive .NET forward. Oh, I lost the slide. Button stuck. Okay, so thank you to all those contributors. Next, .NET and performance. So one of the key tenets of .NET, once we reinvented it back in 2016, has been performance. The reason you should build your applications on .NET is they're going to be the fastest. They're going to run the lowest cost in the cloud.
Bello il confronto diretto con Node, così.
Bisogna farlo vedere agli amici. Io ho qualcuno in azienda che sviluppa con Node, ogni tanto me la meno, e poi tutto queste slide dietro. Ma non ce lo dicono. No, ce lo dicono.
Data access, and you can see it's 90% faster than it was in .NET 5. That's a huge leap in performance. On query performance, it's 36% faster. And what's really cool, if you take this Tech and Power benchmark and you take .NET, you take ASP.NET Core, and you take EF Core, put them all together, that's the first full stack ORM, we show up as number 2 in that benchmark. And so that just shows you building a real application with a web, data, and .NET is going to save you. Now let's talk about some of the cool features that we have in .NET 6. First off, I want to lead in and say, go download it now. There's a URL right here, get.net/6, and you can grab that to grab the newest bits. That's really cool. We've got uniform common base libraries and SDK, build all those app types. We have industry-leading performance. We have simplified development. You know, if you look at development today with things like Python and Node, they make development starting easier. And you're going to see a lot of demos today where we show you how we made .NET 6 the easiest to build new applications with. We've got great new releases of C# and F#. We've got support for Apple Silicon, M1 chip support, and this is a long-term support release, so you can trust it and trust .NET. But we didn't just ship a new version of .NET. Yesterday, we also released Visual Studio 2022. This is the version of Visual Studio that's designed to build .NET applications. And so if you want to go build a great client-side application using a web front end with Blazor, it's got great support for that. If you want to build multi-platform applications using .NET MAUI, it's got support for that. You're going to see some of the really cool features as well today as well. Hot reload, all app types. You know, whatever you're building, whether it's a WinForm application, a WPF application, a web application, we've got hot reload through all those apps. And it even works on things like .NET Framework as well. So that feature persists all of .NET. This release also has great support for Git, whether you want to use Git inside of the IDE for your source control, or you want to actually right-click and have an application, have a GitHub action file, so you can use CI/CD. That's built in all the way from the core of the platform. And it's got IntelliCode. It'll do full statement completions. It'll suggest stuff to you to refactor your application. All of this in .NET and all of this in Visual Studio. Grab it today. Now, I'm really excited about this. You know, we've been shipping these new .NETs since about 2016. That's the first version we shipped .NET Core 1.0. And we know we have lots of customers out there on our older versions of our frameworks. And so we've built a new tool called the .NET Upgrade Assistant. It's available today. You can see we've had 40,000 people try it in preview. And what it will do is it'll help you take an application, whether it's a ASP.NET MVC, Web API, it can be a console application, a WinForm, WPF, class library. It helps you take all of those app types and move them to our new tech. And so it's a guided step-by-step experience. Multiple project types I mentioned are supported. It's got support for C#, and we just added VB support as well, and it supports .NET 6.
So this
tool internally, as we would go out and talk to customers, one of them was Episerver, and we helped them port one of their large applications to the newer .NET. But I want to end with something else. If you are using .NET Framework, you know, you should consider moving your tech to the newer tech because it's faster and has the newer features. But you should feel safe to stay there. You can stay on .NET Framework for as long as you want. It's going to be supported as long as Windows is shipping. But I'm excited to announce that we have an update coming for .NET Framework 4.8. It's going to be .NET Framework 4.8.1, and we're going to add ARM64 support to it as well. So you can keep your older applications on .NET Framework and have a path forward into the newer silicon that Windows supports. Now with that, I want to talk about simplified development. And this is kind of what I was highlighting a little bit earlier. You know, newer languages, get right to code. You don't have to have all the ceremony that we've actually had over the years in .NET. And so first off, when I think about simplified development, I think about hot reload. You know, we all sit in a loop where we write some code, we run it in the IDE.
Ora fanno fighi con l'hot
we look
reload.
at what the output is.
L'hanno aggiunta
We
ieri
decide
sta
to change
slide.
the code, so we stop the application, we change the code, we recompile and start again. That cycle is super slow. What if you could just actually start running your application, go in and make a change and push a button in the IDE or save a file if you're on the command line, and the app would actually update and keep all of its states. So this is going to make the inner loop, that's the action, as I said before, making some code changes, rerunning your application super fast. We're going to demo that. So less time restarting, more time coding. It's available in the CLI and in Visual Studio 2022, and it works on all project types, including .NET Framework 4.6. But of course, it's going to work
Non
best
c'è
with
solo
.NET
per le
6.
cose nuove, c'è anche per .NET 4.6.
Next is C# 10. These are some of the most exciting features I think we've done in recent years, and you'll see demos all day of these features. One is global usings. If you build an ASP.NET Core application, almost every file is going to start off with this whole list of usings at the top. We're going to let you put those away somewhere else and reduce that code. Another thing is namespaces. You know, if you're building lots of apps, your entire file is indented. Well, now we have a feature where you can actually put a semicolon after your namespace, remove all that indentation, less stuff in your code. And you can also see as well is we added a feature called records in C# 9, and we now actually let you use that same feature.
Posso dire che il namespace è scritto in quel modo ancora non sono abituato oggi, perché
now we actually let you do structure. And then
mi
finally, this is my
sconvolge
favorite.
il
In many
codice.
cases, building lambdas in the
Già che
past, you would
siamo
actually have
abituati da
to
10 anni,
use like a
forse di
func
più.
of
Quant'è che adesso
string
c'è
event or
il
whatever.
codice?
Now
È 20 anni
the
che c'è il
compiler will try to
namespace.
interpret that for you,
Così, non
do
so,
that work for you
la
in
mia...
advance. It's going to show that in a little bit.
No, sono d'accordo, anch'io non mi sono abituato, però
If you built an
global
ASP.NET
using è una figata.
No, global using sì, il
It's
namespace, siccome ti toglie
so
quel
they can
pezzo
scale
indentato
to whatever
all'inizio,
level.
mi sembra che
That
manchi
caused a lot
sempre
of
un
ceremony to be in the
if.
application. So you can see on the screen
Anche questa che sta facendo vedere mi piace un sacco.
with .NET 6. And these are going to make your life a lot easier, build faster, write less code, less ceremony. It's going to be great. And so I want to start off and switch my machine here and show a few more things about simplification. So first off, if you've been using .NET for the last couple of years,
Ma che surface sono quelli?
even getting started as a new developer is a little confusing.
Non ho capito, c'è un volume troppo alto
So all the
di
things
che parla, non si
you
sente.
do, if you're on .NET 5, you would see. We've simplified that down in .NET 6.
Ho detto, sono i Surface Studio quelli
Here.
che c'ha lì sopra?
Now all I've
Sì,
got,
penso di sì.
I've got these basic types here. I can build a web app, a Blazor app, a class library, a console, WinForms, WPF. If I had the Maui workloads installed, they would show up here as well. But this is just a getting started experience is simpler. Let's go take a look at a .NET 5 application. So if I build a console application in .NET 5, it's going to look something like this. Notice here, I've got my using statement, which we mentioned before. I've got a namespace, which indents my entire application. I've got this in a class, and then a void static main method right here to do all that. So just to write hello world, I have to have all that stuff. And we've done a bunch of work to simplify that with .NET 6. So I'm going to create a new project. Let's do a console application. And we'll just call it console app 2, that's fine. I want to show us that this is super important. This is a new feature that we don't talk about a lot. If you've been building .NET for the last couple of years, you could, if you're building an ASP.NET application, you could select which version of .NET you wanted to use. If you built a console application, a WinForm application, WPF application, or a class library, you could not do that. And you can see we've added into the file new experience the ability to basically select the framework you want. And we even show you which ones are long-term support, which ones are current.
Anni di sviluppo.
So it's a much better
Deve essere stato un if che hanno spostato, però.
I'm going to click that.
If template contains ASP.NET, mettilo, se no
And
no.
so bump this up.
Però devo dire, sono cose carine, cioè,
from a .NET 5 application with
Ecco,
all
io
that
quando ho aperto la
ceremony,
prima volta la
a
console
.NET
come ha
6
fatto lui,
application
sono
basically is
rimasto
console, right
disorientato
line,
però.
hello world.
Allora, questo per chi comincia è molto comodo,
Which is the way it should be. And this is one of the cool features of
È molto
simplification
node
we have
oriented questo
in
caso.
.NET 6.
Sì.
And so with that, I'm going to bring Maria up, and she's going to talk about the podcast app that we're going to build during the talk today.
Thank you so much, Scott. So during the course of this keynote, you're going to see us build a podcast application that highlights how we've improved our mobile, desktop, and cloud native backends in .NET 6 and what you can look forward to. So I'm just going to smooth over to this particular laptop and show you minimal APIs. But before I jump into our podcast application, I'm going to show you how easy it is to get started with minimal APIs. So I'm just going to do File New. I'm going to select a new project. I'm going to select Empty Web. Hit Next. Web Application 1 is a perfectly good
Sto
name.
tremando per lei.
And I'm going to create it. Now, in just 4 lines of code, you can build a functioning API. Never has it been easier in .NET to do this. It allows us for people to build APIs the way they want to do, allowing for you to build the APIs fast, quick, and get right to the code. So let's go ahead and show you how good these things work together. So I'm going to click on here and show you how the minimal pattern has also transcended into our other templates as well. So I'm going to create a new project by right-clicking on my solution. And I will find that. I'm going to add a new project. I'm going to select web.
La risoluzione bassa certe volte ti fa perdere, comunque c'è una risoluzione molto bassa, ti fa perdere il punto.
And you'll see that you have the option to build a web API with or without controllers, which shows you how simply these two work perfectly together. And with that being said, let me introduce you to the .NET Podcast API, which is a backend of our application. So I'm going to go over to the .NET Podcast API and notice a couple of things. All the things in dependency injections that you like entity frameworks and API, they just work. So I'm going to run this application. And there you have Open API, you have Swagger enabled. These are things that people within .NET Framework love right now. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to execute it. And I get a return of all the categories. But let's say I wanted to return all the episodes. This is another really cool feature that we introduced in the minimal APIs as well, an easy way to build your endpoints. So I'm going to go back to my application. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to add a map get. Now, because I'm an incredibly slow typer, I'm just going to copy and paste it in. I actually copied and pasted it in earlier because I was looking forward to this. But you'll notice that because of improved lambdas, we're able to build these simple endpoints. And with that being said, I'm going to introduce my dear friend Mads, who's going to talk about how the improvements in C# have allowed us to support this minimal
mentre entra lui, una cosa che mi piace poco quando fa vedere questi esempi qua, non è la prima volta che fanno vedere, è che mettono il DB context direttamente lì dentro, quando in realtà è un progetto vero lì dovresti metterci un servizio o cose del genere, però capisco che per spiegarlo lo fai prima, poi la gente poi le fa così.
One of the things you've shown here is the map gets and map posts here, and they have some pretty significant lambdas. Some of them you look at. Let's see. Let's do this map get up here, for instance. That's actually a lot of stuff in a lambda here, and it used to be that when you have a lambda, you have to cast it either you have somewhere that has to be like a delegate type that exactly matches it, which hobbles API design in a way.
Yeah, it looked a bit complicated.
Yeah. So what we said in the language, you know what? The compiler should really figure this out. I'm sure lots of you developers out there have said the same thing. Why can't the compiler figure it out for me? And now it can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of those lambdas. I'm going to sort of pull it into the pit and take the wheels off. And we can just look at what's going on now. So let's take this lambda, move it up here.
Sì, devo dire, questo è carino perché toglie via un po' di bestemmie che devi fare in genere.
And
metterci tipo giusto che non è mai così facile da ricordarsi anche di task di quell'altra roba lì.
Here just to make this all compile. This is So there's not like 100 overloads of map-get. It just takes any delegate.
And this is really the heart of the API experience that we get today.
Yeah, but the problem is delegate didn't used to be enough for the compiler to figure out what to do with a Lambda. But now it can look at all this information, the types coming in, the type coming out, and the fact that it's async, and it can just figure out the right type for it. So if you see the type that it's inferred in the var here is complicated, right? It's a func of several things. The return type is a task because this is async. The compiler figured it all out for you. You didn't have to do it.
Wow. Okay.
And so you can just have one map-get instead of having 1,000 or having the user code here cluttered with casts. So that's a really important improvement, I think. Now, let's put this back together and head up to the top of the file. Here's another thing,
Yeah.
The usings. There aren't even actually that many usings here, and we'll get back to that. But typically, ASP.NET, there's a lot of namespaces with a lot of good stuff, and you tend to want to use a large set of them.
Yeah.
And that's on top of every file. So wouldn't it be great if you could just not have it on top of every file and just put it in one place? So let me cut out these usings. And of course, now we're going to get squiggles. But I have another, an ordinary C# file here. It happened to be calling it global usings.
Okay.
But it can be called anything. This could be anywhere in C# code. I'm going to paste my usings here. That's not going to help because they're still only applying in this file. It's not doing anything with them. But now in C#10, you can say global in front, and now they apply to the whole project.
Voila.
Right? And so you just have one place where you keep track of all the usings that you need for this project. And just to show you that it really works, you can see the squiggles have gone away.
Round of applause online.
Yeah, I'm sure. Please. So one thing, though, is that you noticed, and I mentioned that the list is fairly short. And if you look at, for instance, web application here, it lives in this very common namespace, Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Builder. That wasn't actually on my list of things I hauled out. So, how is it even building here? Why don't I go to squiggle?
Yeah,
there must be something else going on.
What's happening under the hood?
What's happening here is implicit usings.
All right.
So that's where we figured, well, you can have global usings, but we can give you some as well. So based on the project type, there are going to be all these things that you're almost always going to want. ASP.NET here, there's like a list of, 12, 17, whatever, a long list of things you'll always want, including the BCL stuff as well.
Yes.
And so why don't we just build you a global using and put it into the build? And they're implicitly there. You don't have to put them anywhere in your source code.
So is it on by default, or someone has to turn it on?
In new project, it's on by default. You can go and turn it off if you don't like it. So there's an enable here. I can turn into a disable and save. And then go back to program and let the compiler catch up. And you see web application, now it lost its color. Now it got its squiggle, it's gone. So the fact that we said, yes, please, which I would always do now, to implicit usings, I'm going to go and do that again. That essentially means that there's so much stuff you never have to worry about. And imagine coming to the library the first time.
Tra l'altro le demo sono sulla RC e non sulla RC.
What is it, like implicit using global using,
Avevano
Lambda
un po'
improvements,
di paura.
we really embrace this.
Funziona qui a giorni?
For all
Lascia
kinds
stare.
of developers, from newbies to people building microservices.
Exactly.
Love this.
And we did a few more things to kind of get you simplified. So here's one of the APIs that this app is using. It's very short because it's a record, but it's still annoying, as Scott mentioned. Sometimes you have thousands of lines of class declarations, and they're all indented because of this namespace that they have to live in. So why don't we just have a syntax for namespaces that applies to the rest of the file without these curlies and this indentation? So I can just say namespace semicolon and all the rest is in there. Now I can go and just have.
Ma è solo l'abitudine, cioè alla fine sto leggendo un po' i commenti. In realtà quello che non è chiaro non è che fai in modo diverso.
And so the one last thing is that's a super terse syntax.
In realtà va proprio verso farti scrivere meno codice inutile, farti concentrare su esercizi che plughi al volo.
Sai cosa anche? Se sposti il codice anche da un progetto a un altro, così è più semplice. Devi mettere le graffe, così prendi, lo metti e cambi il namespace in alto nel caso.
Same terse simplicity and minimalism as classes. So we built that out fully again for
Guarda, il Visual Basic c'era, Visual Basic per .NET c'era, che se tu lo buttavi nella directory
Right
senza
now, they can
namespace,
download the .NET SDK, and they can try out everything that you do.
vorremmo dimenticarci
With that being said,
Visual
we
Basic.
bring Scott back on stage.
Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks, Maria and Mads. That was great. I think all the customers out there are going to really love all the new C# features that make you allow you to write less code for your applications. Let's next talk about cloud development, which is a big thing these days, and .NET is a great platform for building cloud style applications. And so people always ask me, Scott, can you give me some examples of some of the teams inside of Microsoft that are building their applications or their services on top of .NET? And we're going to talk about a few of these today. First off, you can see here, Azure Active Directory Gateway is running on .NET. The App Service Gateway is running on .NET. I'll talk about both of those in a second. Bing.com, if you go to Bing and Bing something, that's running on .NET. If you're hitting a Dynamics 365 web application, well, the gateway in front of that is running on .NET. So you can see that Azure, Bing, Dynamics are all running on .NET. There's lots more as well, but these are a few that we're going to talk about today. Now, I mentioned a second ago that I said the word gateway a few times. A gateway is like a reverse proxy sitting in front of an application. Azure App Service is an example of the place where this happens, and so is Dynamics. And so we were, talking to teams around Microsoft, and they needed a modern reverse proxy. And we thought that would be a great example of something to try to build on top of .NET 6 as a way to make sure that we're continuing to push and drive performance. And so you can see here on the slide, Dynamics, which is running behind YARP, which is now available in 1.0, available to you today. You can see 100 billion requests a month, 7.5 petabytes of data going through this gateway. And it shows you how .NET can scale. So you've got your cloud scale performance, highly extensible and customizable. It runs on a variety of our .NETs, and it's open source and used by us around some of our biggest services. So I'm super excited about this project. The next thing I think about when I think of cloud is, what are some of the common patterns that developers building cloud applications use? One of those is going to be an interior scale web application. That's where you've got a front end with a back end and some database on the back end. And .NET is great for building these applications. It was designed for this kind of stuff. And the second type of application is the microservice style application. This is what's kind of more modern. You hear words like containers and Kubernetes, but the real point of this is breaking your application into more pieces, and each of those pieces can scale up and scale down independently of each other. It also gives your teams a better way of working because they can version each of those components separately. And the cool thing about this is .NET is great for building all of these types of applications. One of the core things of our team has been focusing on the in-tier and the microservice style applications, and we'll do a demo of some of that in just a second. If you build those types of applications, Azure is a great place to host them. And I'm happy to announce today that .NET 6 is available in Azure App Service in all regions, both on Windows and Linux. It's available in Azure Static Web Applications as well, with Blazor WebAssembly, with AOT support.
Blazor Function ho provato oggi.
Functions,
funzionano
both in process and isolated models. And so, if you want to take your .NET 6 applications, host them in the cloud, we're ready for you right now. Now, there's a new thing we announced.
Domande, tutti abbiamo la tastiera meccanica.
And as you start thinking about building these microservice applications, we want to make sure that both Azure and .NET is completely ready for you. And so the big thing here is, I mentioned a lot of terms earlier, Docker files, Kubernetes, Helm charts, all these things. I'm an app developer. I want to focus on my app, not the infrastructure. And Azure Container Apps enables me to do just that. I don't have to focus on, it's actually running on Kubernetes, but I don't have to think about Kubernetes and all that stuff. I can just think about my containers, set them up, and they just work. Now you might ask, well, what does it do for me? It does a lot of things for you. It provides scale. You're going to see a demo of that in a second. It provides the ability for each of these apps to see each other. In a microservice world, each app has to be able to talk to each other. And it enables that because they're running all in the same cluster. It enables you to basically roll forward and roll back your applications. And so that's going to be Azure Container Apps. It's a great way of building .NET applications for Azure. And I'm also excited to announce that with Visual Studio 17.1, that's the preview of the next minor version of Visual Studio. We've already got support for building worker service applications right from Visual Studio. You can publish right to Azure Container Apps. In the next preview version, we're going to add all of the web types. So you can build an ASP.NET Minimal API and easily publish it right from Visual Studio. Now with that, I'm going to bring up David and Scott, and they're going to talk about how they can build these microservice style applications with .NET.
Thanks, guarda che con questi microfoni è impossibile con queste tastiere che non lo prende il
No,
microfono.
infatti.
It's a pretty good shirt. This is actually a shirt the team made that actually has the commits, and on the back is actually a bunch of names of the team who built the product.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that shirt.
Yeah.
Bellissima la maglia di lui.
All right, so let's context setting.
Yep.
We saw Maria and Mads a minute ago, and they were making a minimal backend web API because we're building a podcast.
Tra l'altro che la maglia si scalda, ti dà un senso di quei LED. Ma c'hai LED reali o
No,
è stampato?
è stampata.
Okay, so podcasts are usually RSS feeds.
Yep.
The naive thing to do would be to have a client app talk.
Io ce li ho tutti a casa in ufficio perché ce l'ho sia a casa che in ufficio.
Let's scale.
It's expensive, right? So let's
Quando
do
si
it.
lavori.
Instead, we
Dai, buon
want to have
esempio.
a front-end API, have an ingestion point where I can send an RSS feed, and it will put it into a background queue because it wants to process that feed to do a whole bunch of things, compute-intensive things.
Okay.
Yep.
So the RSS feed gets sent in and put on a queue, and we don't know whether it's going to be like 1 a minute or 10,000 a minute. We
That's
put
right.
it on Hacker News. It could be a thing.
First, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we need to scale our little startup here.
That's right.
All right.
So we have two applications:
Mhm.
the podcast API for the backend and a background worker and a queue in between them.
Background workers have historically been complicated because, you know, an ASP.NET app is usually good for like a request came in and a response comes back. This is a long running background thing.
That's right.
And then you just said it has to scale too.
That's right.
Okay. That's kind of hard sometimes.
It is hard. But luckily, we have a first-class thing called a worker service in .NET for these background workers specifically.
Let's see it.
All right, let's jump into the code now. So let's go into the project. And this is the backend API that Maria and Matt showed.
Mhm.
Should we zoom a little bit?
Okay.
The queue client right here is the Azure Storage SDK queue client. I'm adding it to the dependency injection container. And I'm grabbing the connection string from configuration called feed queue.
Okay.
And then we're going to scroll down, all the way down to a minimal endpoint. So very succinct right here. The V1 feeds endpoint is going to inject the queue client via dependency injection in the argument.
Right.
It's pretty nice. And then we get the RSS feed ingested from the client is sending a post to our endpoint. And we're going to create the queue if it doesn't exist. And then we're going to put a binary serialized payload into the queue. So we've got our information from the actual client. We're going to put it into the queue, and we're off to the races.
So you've posted that to that endpoint, and then you have to ingest it, put it into the queue, and then some workers will pick it up later.
That's right.
All right.
So let's jump to the worker service. And this is a brand new .NET 6 worker service, which is using minimal API style code. There's global usings, top level statements. So now we have, instead of like 20 lines of code, I think it's like 20. Let's say 4 lines of code. Not 24.
24. And I'm noticing, like you said, this line 1, like there's no line 0.
Exactly.
Right. We saw what Mads and Maria showed. There's the usings are implicit.
Yep.
We got to outdent instead of indent.
It does feel weird having my code pushed up against the left.
It's too far left.
Yeah, it's nice. So I'm configuring access to our local DB, which is SQL Server.
Yeah.
Our queue client is being configured the same way it was configured in the web API.
Right.
And then we're going to just add some code to handle incoming feeds, right, off the queue.
Okay.
So we're going to jump into the worker service.
So we've got this add hosted service worker.
Yep, the thing runs forever in the background, doesn't handle any traffic.
Okay, so this is the actual worker right here.
Yep.
And it's an internal class, and it's derived from background service.
That's right. So it runs for a long time.
Okay, un dettaglio, non so se noti la maestria con cui si muove nel codice con le frecce e i rettangoli, anzi,
it's going to have a single feed item.
So the feed item comes in,
un dettaglio, ma è un mostro.
I'm just one background service, and I pick it up and I look at it and I do some stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then we do some dependency injection magic we'll skip over.
Yeah.
And then to the important part, we grab the body of the message.
Yeah.
Scroll to the right, just a little bit. we convert that thing from JSON, because we added JSON payload to the actual queue. And now we're going to grab it as a record. And we can actually deconstruct it, which is pretty cool. A cool feature of records.
What's that?
Yeah.
What are those?
So you grab the record, and we can actually pull the properties out without having to do anything else. This is a C#9 feature, I believe.
Nice. So that's an unnamed object. It's a record out there, just like Matt's talked about.
Yep.
Very cool. All right. So that picks it up.
Yep. And then we ingest into the queue.
All right, but Hunter was talking about cloud native and containers and scale. You just showed me how one worker can pick this thing up and do a thing. What if I want to do it n times in the cloud?
So if you wanted to, typically what you would do is you would scale out your workers on demand based on the load of the queue size. Okay. So if I get Hacker News, if I get spammed or for some reason,
you could be Hanselman.
You could be okay, sure. You could be Hanselman. You get a big ingestion of queues, and then you get more. You would get more worker services to handle the load.
All right. Well, we've heard about containers. How do I get this into a container then?
All right, so first we have to containerize the application by adding Docker support. But since this is a Keynote, this has been done beforehand.
Yeah, but we can do it really easily. Just right-click, add Docker support. Cool.
So now we have it for our podcast API and for our worker. There's 2 Docker files there.
Yep.
All right. And now, with magic demo gods, I'm going to show you the live service running in Azure. I'm going to skip that part.
Okay, so we log into the Azure portal.
Azure portal should have
refresh. Has it logged us out because we've been hanging out?
All right. Yay.
It's okay. We took too long before we were waiting. We'll log you back in.
So it's running in Azure, we promise.
There you go.
There's the podcast application.
So we got a resource group.
It's running as an Azure container app because we actually have a microservice.
Cool.
Here's the environment. Scroll down a little bit. You should see 2 applications, the API and the podcast worker, and there's one more that I won't talk about.
Okay, so we got the podcast, we got the ingestion. Cool. Okay, so it's up there in a container
right now. And now we want to show you web scale. So here is
web scale.
So I have a script that will simulate a ton of users hitting my backend API.
Okay.
And the queue, right now, there's nothing running for the background queue.
Okay, no replicas.
I'm not paying for any compute right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're not famous yet.
It's free.
It costs us nothing.
It's free, right.
All right, let's do it.
So now we're going to hit enter.
So you're simulating traffic right here.
Yep.
You're grabbing
I got Hacker News, and now
my podcast.
And now it's going to scale up. Now it's going to scale up. I hope it's going to scale up. It's going to go from 0.
Effetto demo.
So you just did a bunch of requests.
Eccolo.
And we've got a replica here. And then how do we know when it succeeds?
It's going to hit 1 at some point.
Okay. Takes a couple 10, 20 seconds.
It's
probably already happened, right?
It's possible.
So which one of these? This one here?
Yeah, it probably will show up.
Okay. Do we have to run this multiple times?
Let me try one thing.
All right.
Let me try.
And if we figure out something, oh, you're going to run the wild.
Yep.
Ecco.
Okay, so you were hoping that would automatically.
Come sdrammatizzare su una demo. Ho imparato da Hanselman.
Okay, cool. So that means that it now went from 0, no money, to like 3, and then when it's done, it'll chill back down to 1 or 2.
That's right. After the whole keynote is done.
The whole keynote is
0. Right.
Very cool. All right.
So this will set up scale.
Yeah.
Microservices.
Container apps.
.NET. Container apps. Docker.
Long running background services.
Yep.
So then now our client team is all set up for success.
Yep. Awesome.
Very cool. All right. Let's bring it back to Scott.
Thanks, David and Scott.
Here.
Let's talk about client developments. So we shipped Blazor a couple of years ago, and Blazor is a great way of building full stack web applications with .NET.
Oh, una tecnologia seria, dai.
Build a modern client-side application just using C#. You don't have to write any JavaScript at all. And we have 2 models of building Blazor applications. We have a Blazor server application, which is when you have the full power of .NET, because the app's actually running on a server. And as I'm making changes to the application, a request is sent down to the server, it sends the state back, and we redraw just the parts of the screen that need to be updated. And so it's an amazing tech because it gives you a super lightweight class-style application, hundreds of bytes versus megs. But there's also another flavor of Blazor called Blazor WebAssembly. And in Blazor WebAssembly, we use the power of WebAssembly to run your entire Blazor application directly in the browser.
Cosa figa di
This is kind of
Blazor,
cool
di questo
because
slide qua,
an
a
application
parte i
like this
colori,
doesn't even
ce l'ho
require
uguale alla prima volta che ho fatto la prima sessione, credo 2 anni fa, e sono rimaste le stesse cose.
with no connection to the back end.
Il Azure download
and
site
so we offer you these amazing choices of building whatever kind of front-end app
con la
you want to
H pure.
build with .NET. It gets a lot better with .NET 6. Those Blazor WebAssembly applications, we actually interpreted them and using a WASM interpreter in .NET 5. With .NET 6, you can compile your entire application before. We call that ahead of time compile, which means the app will run much, much faster and more data speeds in the browser. Another thing is, I mentioned before, one of the benefits of Blazor Server is small footprints of amount of data that goes to the browser. We've done a lot of work in .NET 6 to reduce the size of a Blazor web.
Quando fanno il lancio di .NET si vestono tutti sempre di rosso, è tradizione.
So those are just a few of the things. I'm going to let Dan really do a deep dive into all the cool stuff that's coming in Blazor and .NET 6 in just a second. But I'm also excited about Blazor Fluent UI components. So about a year ago, we started working on Teams, Microsoft Teams. There's a mechanism that you can build apps that can be hosted inside of Microsoft Teams. And if you're a .NET developer, you can build a Teams application using Blazor. And we had to make sure those Teams applications looked appropriate inside of the Teams client. And so Teams is built using something called Fluent UI. It's some UI standards built by Microsoft. And what we've done, you can see here, we've got 40 plus Blazor components that wrap Fluent UI, which allows you to build applications that look amazing and look like modern Microsoft applications using Blazor and .NET. And you can see here integration with web, Windows, Teams, Office, and more. And I think that maybe they're going to show a little bit of this. I know they're going to show a dark and a light theme thing in a second. But super excited about these new components for Blazor. So you've got all the Blazor 6 features, Blazor Fluent UI components. And then, of course, you just can't talk about client with Blazor. We also have to talk about .NET MAUI or .NET Multi-Platform App UI. This is one of the exciting features to me in .NET 6. It's going to ship early next year. And what this is it's an evolution of Xamarin. So Xamarin was a library or a product for building iOS and Android applications on .NET. But we thought, let's take that to the next level. Let's actually let you build apps that run on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. So one single code base can target all of those platforms. We also took the Xamarin and enhanced it again as well. With Xamarin, you had a project for each of these different platforms. Now we have a single unified project. One project can support all of those app types. You can right-click in the IDE and deploy to the various targets you want to do it. And I said it's going to be available next year. Another cool part about MAUI is it's not really a UI stack. If you look here, notice it's on Windows, it shows WinUI. On Mac, it shows Mac Catalyst, iOS, and Android. What MAUI actually is doing is abstracting each of those platforms and using the actual real underlying technology. So your Windows app, if you build a Windows MAUI app, it looks like Windows. If you build a Mac app, it looks like Mac. And that's one of the cool aspects of this technology. And so I'm super excited about it. It's going to ship early next year. And then we thought, let's take it to the next extreme. I'm a web developer, but just because I'm a web developer, I still might want to have access to a desktop or a device. And so we're going to let you take Blazor and .NET MAUI and merge them together into a single unified stack. So I can build a MAUI application, I can reference a Blazor project, and that lets me build a desktop application using web, which means I can share all my web components across all those different platforms. And so whether you're a web developer or you're a native application developer, you get the best of both worlds in .NET between MAUI and then Blazor and .NET MAUI. So with that, I want to move and talk to a couple of customers that we have running on .NET. And so this is Powered4.tv. It's a startup media company based in the UK, serving 65 countries worldwide. They provide independent, on-demand wrestling content to their viewers. They use Blazor WebAssembly for their front end and ASP.NET Core on Azure, and are very happy with the productivity, performance, and scale. In fact, they've been using .NET 6 release candidates for the live site for a while. Check out Steve's talk later in the conference. Also, I want to talk about ProntoPay. ProntoPay is another startup based in Houston, Texas. that chose to go into production with .NET MAUI because they needed to move fast. They love the simplicity of a single code base that they can build to target multiple devices and the productivity of Visual Studio. And then GE Digital Aviation, they are a group that developed Flight Pulse, an app that puts data and analytics in the hands of more than 3,000 Qantas pilots to help them improve safety and efficiency on every flight. The config console is built with Blazor, and they were able to work faster, share more code, and it was a lot more seamless development experience than they had previously had with Angular. And so with that, let's roll a video.
Flying an airplane is no small feat. Commercial pilots must make hundreds of decisions to get passengers to their destinations safely. But what if we could give pilots the tools to make better decisions, to understand how their actions affect critical areas like safety, fuel efficiency, and sustainability? GE Digital created the Flight Pulse app to meet this challenge, connecting millions of data points and onboard sensors to a pilot's true insight. Built on Microsoft Azure and using Blazor, a framework for developing web UI with C# and .NET, Flight Pulse provides data to the people who need it most. GE developers built the backend APIs for Flight Pulse with ASP.NET Core. And they chose Blazor, a feature of ASP.NET Core, for the UI. Because Blazor uses C# for both client and server code, developers could easily share code and logic between the front and back end. Backed by Blazor and other Microsoft technology, GE was able to work faster and more efficiently, bringing Flight Pulse to life in months instead of years. Now pilots can review their post-flight data and make important adjustments. In fact, pilots have increased their performance of fuel efficiency techniques by up to 15%, reducing carbon emissions. Putting useful data into pilots' hands benefits everyone. Together, GE Digital and Microsoft are making the skies a better place to be.
And I'm excited
Molto
to
bene.
also mention that .NET MAUI
Quindi il
Preview
sistema
10
degli
is
aerei
available
con
today.
Blazor.
You just have to grab the preview builds of
Mi sento
Visual Studio
sereno.
17.1.
Beh,
And if
lì
you
devo
didn't know
andare in
this, you
Francia
can
con
actually install
l'aereo.
preview builds side by
Sereno.
side with the RTM build. They don't mess with each other at all, so it's actually
L'ha
safe.
fatto appunto il
I've been doing
software.
it for years at this point. And so if you want to try .NET
Sono
MAUI,
tranquillissimo.
grab the preview build. It will not, interfere with your RTM build. And the Preview 10 adds a few things: Windows App SDK, fully integrated, more controls, performance improvements for Android, and a lot of layout improvements and bug fixes. And as I said before, this is going to ship early next year. And now that we've talked about some of the client technologies, I'm going to bring up Dan to talk about Blazor.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Hello, everyone. Well, you just saw how we can build a simple and scalable backend for our .NET podcast app. Now let's use ASP.NET Core and Blazor to build a beautiful modern web UI for our .NET podcast app. So I've got the front end application here. Let's go ahead and get this running. Go ahead and build.
Non scrive niente perché non va complete.
For the application. It's got a nice, modern, responsive UI. It looks great on big screens and small screens. This page was actually built using ASP.NET Core Razor pages, so it's being dynamically generated on the server. But if we sign into the podcast app, now the podcast app part, this was built using Blazor WebAssembly. So it's running client-side in my browser on a WebAssembly-based .NET runtime. So this is full stack web development with .NET. Now we've got a bunch of features already implemented. We can check out one of these podcasts. Let's check out the .NET MAUI podcast. We can select an episode. Let's go ahead and play that. Oh yeah, I got in-browser playback. Got a nice jazzy theme song. I'm definitely going to want to listen to that later. So let's go ahead and mark it actually to listen later using this little icon. that will make that episode show up in my listen later list, so I can remember to listen to all those podcasts that I want to listen to. We can also go back to the Discover page, and you saw these little plus icons on each of the podcasts. We can select podcasts that we want to subscribe to. Let's subscribe to .NET Maui, maybe this one. And now I'll get notified when there are new episodes for these podcasts. And I want those to show up here on this subscriptions page, but nothing's showing up there yet because it's not implemented. Let's take care of that now. All right, so I'm going to snap the browser over here to the side with Visual Studio. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room to see the code. All right, so here's the actual subscriptions page.razor.
Lo faccio anche un cliente domani. Clicchi qua e invece no, non lo vedi perché mi è stato ancora implementato.
All of the subscriptions into this show subscriptions variable. So let's render them. So
Bisogna sempre imparare dai grandi.
I don't know. Let's add an unordered list, and then let's do a for each over each item in the show subscriptions.
Allora, loro stanno usando una versione diversa da noi.
And inside here, let's render list items for each one. There we go.
No, vedi che non va autocomplete per lui.
We'll go ahead and, I don't know, let's just render the title of the...
Non arriva neanche a lui. Gli è morto.
Gli è morto anche a lui.
Ora che si è ripreso ogni tanto.
Title.
Ah no, guarda. Ma non lo so, ogni tanto mi riparte.
Item dot.
No, ma sul tag HTML non va, sul codice va.
Should be good. We're looking all right here. Yep. So now let's go ahead and click the hot reload button to apply that to our running application. And boom, it just shows up like almost instantaneously. Hot reload will apply my code changes to the running app while it's running without having to rebuild and restart. So you preserve all your app state, you can be productive and code and build your UI quicker. Let's add some more stuff in here. Let's go and let's show the author.
Quando funziona è veramente figo.
Sì, ma l'auto-reload è una figata.
Item dot.
Tipo adesso c'ho un progetto aperto.
Item author. Right. So this time, instead of using the hot reload button, I've already set up this setting right here where we can hot reload on file save. So I'm going to hit the save button this time. Oop, looks like I have a bug in my code. What did I do? Oh, yep, a little turd at the end there. There we go. Okay, so we'll save that right here.
Okay.
And boom, hot reloads into the application. Great. We're going to need some images. So let's do image source equals, and I think on each item, there is an image property that we can use to get the image URL. Let's close that off, save one more time, and we're seeing our images on the screen. Great. So that's hot reload. Now, obviously, we've got some styling issues here. We need to fix that. I've already got a little show card component that's part of this application that I'm going to use to render each show. So let's remove all the stuff that we hand typed before, and let's just put in this custom-made component. What is this doing? Well, let's go to definition to see what it does. In this show card component, we have a card, and it has an action menu. And inside the action menu, that's where we're actually going to render the little plus sign so we can subscribe to each show. And then if we look at the definition for the card, that's pretty simple. That's just divs and rendering the picture and so forth. Okay, so let's go ahead and hot reload that. We'll save. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So we've got full width images, and we've got styling for our title and author. We can see the little action on the on each show now. If we unsubscribe, it then disappears on the subscription page. We can add another one back if we want to, and that should then show up on our subscriptions page. Okay, so that's good. It's not quite what I want yet, though. Like, I really would like these podcasts to look like the ones on the Discover page, the sort of grid-like layout. Let's see how that's done on the Discover page. Well, it's got this grid component that it's using to lay out each of the podcasts. So let's just copy that. We'll just reuse that. We can get rid of our unordered list and just put in the grid. Formatting here. And then I think we got to change the code up here. Let's remove this group.value and put in our show subscriptions. So we're iterating over that. And I don't even think we need this T item here because that should be inferred. Okay, now when I save this, okay. Well, Visual Studio now is telling me that this actually was a change that can't be hot reloaded, involving a little too much stuff. And that can happen. Some changes are not supported with hot reload. We're working on expanding the set of changes that are. But when it does, Visual Studio will prompt you and let you know, hey, you need to rebuild this application, which is this first option. Or you can go back to editing if you want to fix things up. And there's even this option up here, this checkbox that you can say, you know what? I always want to rebuild whenever this happens, so just go ahead and do that for me. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the subscriptions page, rebuild and apply the changes. Hopefully, if I did everything right, then we should now see our subscriptions nicely laid out in the grid, just like they are on the Discover page. So it's rebuilding, and it refreshes the browser for me automatically. Beautiful. All right, that looks exactly like how I want it to. Now, one last thing I want to fix. If I remove all my subscriptions, I'm just going to uncheck these. They disappear. Now I'm left with this blank screen. That's not very nice. Let's add a little bit of UI when we have no subscriptions. Got another little snippet right here that I'm just going to copy and paste, save on some typing. We'll go back to the app. So in this empty results for this grid, we're going to add that little bit of content, and then we'll save that into Hot Reload one more time. And boom, we got our nice little UI placeholder. We can go back, discover podcasts, subscribe to a couple, and now they show up on our subscriptions page. Awesome. So that's Hot Reload. You can get productive fast. Looks like this app, it's ready to publish. Let's go ahead and publish the application. So I'm going to go to the Solution Explorer, right-click on Podcasts Server, the server project, and we're going to publish this application. Now, when we do that, this is a Blazor WebAssembly app. We want to use all of the new optimizations in .NET 6 to make this app nice and small and load fast. Now, in earlier versions of .NET, we could trim the .NET code to remove any code that you weren't using. We would pre-compress the files to make them as small as possible using Brotli compression. But the .NET runtime itself, which was implemented in WebAssembly, was kind of a fixed quantity. Let me show you what I mean. Like in this app, even in development, we can see this. If I F12 to see the browser DevTools, make this a little bit bigger. And let's just clear out the site data so we can see all the files get downloaded. And there's lots of stuff that will be downloaded during development because it's unoptimized. But if we look at the .NET WASM file, the runtime, you know, that guy, it's a little big, you know, I mean, for a runtime, it's pretty impressive that it's only a megabyte. This is only gzip compressed. If you Brotli compress it, it does get smaller, like 700-800 kilobytes. But can we do better? And the answer is yes. In .NET 6, we can. We have this new .NET WebAssembly build tools that you can install with Visual Studio or with the .NET SDK. These build tools do a number of things. They allow us to ahead of time compile our application for much better runtime performance. We can link in native dependencies into our Blazor WebAssembly app. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're actually going to relink the runtime to remove stuff that we don't even need. Okay, so I've got the tools installed. So all I have to do is publish. So if I go back to the app, let's actually do that publish now, right-click publish. Now, I've already actually done this before. It does take a little while to run all those optimizations, but we can go ahead to the publish output and let's run the server. Okay, there it is. Now, when I've done this in the past, I hit this caching issue. So we're just going to fix this real quick. This is from the previous demo. We're using the same port as an earlier demo. So I'm just going to right-click, empty cache, and hard refresh. And now when we go to the root of the app, hopefully, okay, we can see the application. Now, if we go to the podcast app and leave the browser DevTools up, but we want to see that .NET.WASM, there it is. And if we look at its size now, only 350 kilobytes, dramatic size reduction. So our app loads much faster. We can do even better with .NET 6 by pre-rendering this app from the server. We can take those same Blazor components and render them server-side so that we get HTML and pixels on the screen like almost immediately. And with .NET 6, we can actually take any state that you used while pre-rendering, like you went and fetched all the podcasts, and we can persist that into the page so that it can be reused on the client. Like notice if I refresh this app, refresh, I can just keep refreshing. It loads almost instantly. There's no loading spinner. There's no loading ... That's because it's being pre-rendered. And if we look at the source for the page, the HTML that we got from the server, here's all these divs. These are all the podcasts. They're already rendered into the page. And at the very bottom, there's this Blazor component state. That's the podcast data that we got from the server that we can then reuse on the client. That's state preservation during pre-rendering in .NET 6. Last thing, this thing, of course, has got to be a progressive web app. So you can see that Edge it's a progressive web app. It's got a web service worker and a web manifest. We can install this on our Windows machine. And now we've got a nice native shell. It looks great. Listen to podcasts. This is now a stunning web application built with .NET 6. But if we really want to deliver an elevated experience to our podcast users, we're actually going to want to have native client apps for mobile and desktop and take full advantage of the capabilities of those devices and do things that you might even be able to do on the web. And for that, we're going to need .NET MAUI. And that's what Maddie, I think, is going to show us now. Come on out, Maddie.
Thanks, Dan.
Vabbè ragazzi, su questo vi devo lasciare perché purtroppo
Ciao Daniele, grazie mille della compagnia e della tastiera.
Is the best
Ciao.
way
Ciao.
to develop apps with .NET and C# and XAML for Windows, Android, iOS, and Mac Catalyst. So with your desktop platforms, your mobile platforms, all the things you could possibly want. And right here, I actually have the same
È entrato un
app
certo Andrea
design
Santarello
that you just saw from
che
Dan.
vuole.
But instead of being built with Razor, it is built with C# and .NET. So let's take a look at the Solution Explorer when I find my mouse. You can see it's kind of the MVVM you know and love if you've built a desktop or a mobile app with .NET before. We've got our views and our view models. We've got some other stuff in here for Blazor, and we'll look at that later. And I just have some pages right here and all the things I could possibly need to build a beautiful app with XAML and .NET and C#. So .NET MAUI, like Scott mentioned, is really built on this foundation of being really, really simple. And so we have one project for you where all of your code lives, and that's right here. That's this Microsoft NET Conf 2021 MAUI project. And so it's got one project file where I have all the target frameworks listed using multi-targeting with .NET 6. And I can also set all of the attributes of my application in this one place. So it's just called .NET Pods. I have my app ID, my version 1, because this is the first release of this app. Some target framework stuff for the supported operating systems for the platforms I'm on. And then this is probably my favorite part of .NET MAUI. All of our shared images are declared right here. So we see that we're just including the wildcard folders for these images and fonts, which in my Solution Explorer are right, scroll, resources here. So I have some fonts, some images, I have shared strings, I have shared styles, and then I have these SVGs here as well that are called app icon and splash. So with .NET MAUI, you can use SVG files right off the bat. That means they're going to scale perfectly for you no matter what device or resolution you are targeting. And you don't have to mess around with all different types of PNGs and sizes. But something that we do that's really cool is we dynamically create for you app icons and splash screens based on the files you give us and the attributes you set in your project file. So this is just a MAUI image, and you can see it's my resources, the app
Mitico
icon
Dan,
right here.
cambiano piani
And I have a
veramente.
foreground file. So
Può
this
essere.
app icon back here is actually just a background color. And then I have my foreground file, which is the foreground. So that's a little logo of the podcasts app. And then I just have is app icon true. That's it. And that tells the app that when it builds this and bundles it and makes the package native for the device or the platform that it's running on, to use that as the app icon. And same thing with the splash screen. So the splash screen or the loading screen or the launch screen, whatever you want to call it, we just have an SVG we give it in a background color, and that pops right up when we load up the app. So I have it running here already on Windows. You can see it's the same app, but like I said, it is in XAML and C#. So there's a little bit different styling because my app isn't quite as pretty as Dan's, but he worked really hard on it, so it's fine. It's the same thing. I can click around. I can see everything. I can subscribe. This beautiful subscription functionality is wonderful. But I have all of the tooling that you'd get for Windows apps, and this is using WinApp SDK, so it's WinUI 3, this app. I get all of that tooling inside of Visual Studio 2022, which shipped yesterday. And I am in Visual Studio 2022 Preview 1, so the preview release, which also shipped yesterday, which is where you're going to get all of the MAUI development tools and the MAUI workload installed right for you from the installation. So like Scott said, great to run them side by side. So let's go into a XAML page here. We'll go into the Discover page. Got a lot of code here. And so one of my favorite things to show off the beautiful XAML Hunt Reload is to first pop into XAML Live Preview. So this is actually the same app. It's this app. And it's taking a second to load, and that's okay. We can restart it if we need to. Let's do that. Boop, boop, boop. I played around with it too much. That's okay. We're going to let it rebuild. And then we're going to look at Live Preview, which you might have seen from some of the demos yesterday. Live Preview is the ability to actually mirror the app that's running in Visual Studio. So instead of having to click in between it being up on top of my screen right now like it is, or move it to the side or move it to my second monitor, I can just pop open Live Preview and I see it right here. I can add my rulers and my grids and all the great things. So on my collection view here, let me pin that. On my collection view, which is kind of this collection of all the different, it's kind of like a grid.
all the different podcasts we have here. I'm just going to add a background color, and I'm going to make it hot pink because it's going to be very obvious when I make this beautiful hot pink background change. I'll zoom this in a little bit. And I can see that I can add my grid lines. It's just the app that's running right here in Visual Studio. I can also go ahead and inspect different parts of my UI. So let's pull up this live visual tree here and expand this app. And so I can see that this is a shell app. We're using shell to describe our navigation. It's just 4 tabs: discover, subscriptions, listen later, and settings. I can open it up and click around. I can see this collection view. I can go to where that's defined in the code. And I can really easily navigate all my XAML, even on this super constrained screen right now, because I'm zoomed way in so you can see it, and find all the different things I need so I can make the edits I need really quickly. So let me get rid of that hot pink. Control Z. Ooh, there we go. Don't want that. And let's take a look at this at the second platform I want to show you, which is Android. So I have a platforms folder in this project. And it has some of the native code I need to tell an app how to start on all the different platforms. So I have Android, iOS, Mac, Catalyst, and Windows. And because this app is multi-targeted, I can go into my regular debug and deployment dropdown, my platform selector, whatever you want to call it. I can change my framework to .NET 6. And it pops up with this long titled thing, which is a beautiful new feature of Windows 11 called the Windows subsystem for Android. So I'm going to start building this. Give it a second. And I'm going to tell you how I did this, which is by using the Android debug bridge, the ADB, which is part of the Android development kit that's installed with Maui and Visual Studio. You don't have to do anything special to get that. I opened up the Windows subsystem for Android. I connected to the port, and now my computer believes that this is a physical Android device plugged into my machine. But it's just showing up right here on my screen. And this is the same app, the same code I just had on Windows, but now it's running on Android. And I can prove this to you by doing another hot reload here. Background color is hot pink. And there we go. Nice and ruining this beautiful app with my background colors. So the Windows subsystem for Android is built, it uses the Amazon App Store. So if you need to use the Google Play APIs, this might not be the right solution for you to test that specific functionality, but you can use this just like an emulator, except it's, as you saw, a lot faster than what you might expect with an emulator. Or you can use a physical device. There's all different ways to debug and target Android, and you can do what's best for you depending on the needs of your app. Since this app is not using any Google Play APIs, that I have no problem using the Windows subsystem for Android here, and it's awesome and works great. And I still have my live visual tree here, so I can click around. Okay, that's one half of the Maui story. We're going to flip over to the Mac. You can tell that this is my Mac because it has all my stickers on it. And up here, I have the same app, again, the same XAML, same C# running on an iPhone simulator. So it's in dark mode because dark mode is
È una storia un po' più lunga, Daniele, però ti può rispondere Dan se è ancora in chat.
I could, do all the code editing I want to do here. This is Visual Studio for Mac preview, which released yesterday as well. We are currently working on .NET Maui support in Visual Studio for Mac. So you're not going to have as full and robust of an experience as you have in the Windows preview yet. We're looking at releasing that in preview early next year for Mac, and then shipping it with .NET Maui when we do ship general availability. But it's still a great text editor. It's been rebuilt from the ground up. They're moving it to .NET 6.
Io fra
so
8
VS
minuti
Mac
devo
is going to
staccare.
be built on .NET 6 in a couple releases.
Pensavo che finissero alle 6,
And it is going to have native Mac M1 support for the new processor. So it's
La
already
keynote in teoria era un'ora.
but it's going to get even faster, which is very exciting. And so, yeah, so I have it on the iOS simulator here, and I can interact with it and all the things. It's beautiful. Little layout stuff that I can go tweak if I want to, because this is now rendering using the iOS controls for the native iOS platform. And then there's one more I want to show you. So let's pull this up, and I think I have it running, and I do. Finally, on my Mac. So this is running natively on my MacBook using what's called Mac Catalyst, which is kind of Mac's and Apple's cross-platform technology to run the same app for a MacBook, for an iPad OS, for on an iPad, and for an iPhone. So we can actually deploy this version of the app onto all those devices, which is really exciting. But it's the same thing. Of course, I have my dark mode. Gotta have it. It's great. Turn that off. And this is all, again, the same code. So I know it sounds like I repeated myself, but I am just so excited that we can have this one project, the same pages, the same MVVM and C# and XAML and all the things running in all the places using the amazing tooling that we have with Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac for iOS, Android, Mac, and Windows using .NET MAUI.
Maddie, hold on.
Oh, no.
Before you wrap up, I can tell you're about to finish. I have something to show you. We just added something to the Blazor web application.
Okay.
And it's super cool. Let me show it to you. So let me bring up a browser here.
È impazzito.
The site deployed to Azure. And so when you sign in now, there was this Listen Together tab. You may have noticed that before. It's now working. What this allows us to do, go to the site on your Mac. If I pick an episode, like let's just pick this one, there's this icon over here called Listen Together.
Sì, sono
I can
impazziti.
select an episode, and then let me type in my name, and this will create a room.
Sono tutti...
And then you should be able to join my room. I see it. So this is using SignalR, so it's a real-time experience. Now we can listen to this podcast together.
Guarda.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
You can react. Yeah, I see you're sending me some hearts. Yeah, I'm gonna send you some thumbs ups. Yeah, so I think this is a really great experience for listening to podcasts with your friends.
Yeah.
Can we get this in the MAUI version of the app on mobile and desktop? It's just a Blazor component.
Dan, I'm like 10 steps ahead of you. Don't worry. Let's take a look at what I've done here. I brought in that same component you're using in that Blazor app. I brought it into my MAUI project here.
Sweet.
So I just linked it. It's just a library, right? Podcast components. And I referenced it in this page we have, which I have up, the Listen Together page. That's just a Blazor web view.
A Blazor,
right?
So that's not kind of like a little browser control in your MAUI app.
In my MAUI app, yep. And so my Listen Together component, I reference it right here just as a component type. And then in my shell, which is again how I describe kind of the hierarchy of the navigation of my app, I just added a Listen Together tab.
So does it work?
I go here, let's see, it's loading.
Can you join?
With Blazor. Oh, that's your room?
Can you join my room?
I'll join as Maddie too.
Oh, you can never have enough Maddie. You can never have enough. All right, let's see.
And then I'll clap.
Yeah, we're listening to the podcast. Oh my goodness, lots of applause.
And this player here, this is cool, is native to the Mac. So that's actually built with the code necessary for Mac to have the best player experience. That's a web player, and on there was the Android player, and now it's on Mac. And now I'm going to put the crying emoji because I'm so happy this demo worked.
So native .NET MAUI app with native UI controls, with Blazor web UI all together, cross-platform, desktop and mobile and web. That's pretty amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We're going to turn it back over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Maddie and Dan. That was great. And with that, you've seen a lot of the cool technologies that we're releasing with .NET 6. And so my ask to you is go grab .NET 6 today, download Visual Studio 2022 today, go try the Upgrade Assistant, and try out the MAUI previews. I think you're going to find, I will tell you, sitting back and being part of the keynote and watching all the things that we released today is never a better time to be a .NET developer. So please have a great conference and ask us lots of questions on Twitter. We're going to be there all week. Thank you.
All right.
Oh my goodness, Scott, why don't you come join us?
È finita la
It's only a 90-minute roller coaster. One of the things that's interesting when we do these kind of demos is that, like Maddie was just...
Adesso partiranno le sessioni.
Adesso partono le sessioni. Aspetta che metto quest'altra per salutare. Sì, infatti. Vabbè, hanno detto un sacco di cose. Alcune onestamente aspettate perché sapeva da un po' che .NET 6, 4, 16, quello che il numero che c'era stesso qua, però hanno fatto vedere delle cose. Questa cosa del podcast, al di là delle prese in giro, è carina, hanno fatto vedere un esempio vero. A me la cosa che piace ultimamente che stanno facendo questi eventi qua è che stanno facendo, lo stanno usando non in degli hello world, ma ti fanno vedere qualcosa che funziona perlomeno, no? Sì. Quindi quello è carino. Usavano prima quello degli aerei, adesso hanno cambiato questo del podcast, poi usavano Blazor Pizza, era famosissimo, va bene. Poi quello degli aerei che faceva, si chiama Sanders lì, che era bellino anche lì, e ora questo qua del podcast è ancora più bello. Sta squadra del reaction insieme è carino come esempio.
Va bene, sì.
Infatti fanno vedere un po' di tutto, quello sì. Hello Podcast, esatto, invece che Hello World fanno Hello Podcast. non se l'aspettavano nemmeno loro che funzionasse, no, molto no, l'ho vista un po' titubare a un certo punto, però vabbè, l'avranno provata 767 volte, però vabbè, ci sta, è normale, è un evento così mondiale, ci sta che siano cose, anche il fatto che abbiamo preso prima in giro con Daniele che non avevano aggiornato alla 6.0 è perché comunque vogliono far vedere che le demo funzionano, tanto a parte che l'ultima versione che hanno rilasciato era già utilizzabile in produzione. Ovviamente avranno ricompilato, credo, poco più perché hanno lasciato 2 settimane fa, non credo che abbiano cambiato chissà che, quindi quel minimalismo del codice che si è visto prima andrà digerito, assolutamente sì, è normale. Ripeto, io ho provato oggi a lavorare con Nespace scritto in quel modo e altre 2 o 3 cose che hanno aggiunto, ci devi fare un attimo l'occhio, perché è quello soprattutto, è l'occhio. Il Nespace senza le graffe.
Tanta roba meno che una volta che l'hai fatto, secondo me indietro non torni più.
Sì, io ho provato a rilavorare questi giorni su un progetto .NET Framework 4.6, 4.5, non mi ricordo. Sai che sono già spaesato a fare quel salto lì? Perché passare da core a quello già c'è delle cose, dici, oddio, dov'è lo startup? Cerchi le cose, dependency injection, poi potevi averle comunque, però con delle librerie esterne, adesso sei troppo abituato bene, e qui sei ancora abituato meglio. Così. Comunque vedremo. Comunque usciranno, credo, faccio questo spoiler qua, ieri Andrea ha già pubblicato un articolo in cui spiega Azure Function con .NET 6, quindi Function 4, con Runtime 4. Usciranno, credo, altri articoli, no credo, sicuramente altri articoli su UG.NET, quindi seguite UG.NET fra sito, live, poi c'è la .NET Conf di Daniele, è un'altra community, ma si può fare lo stesso, perché qua Daniele, facciamo la pubblicità a Daniele, c'è la .NET Conf di Daniele fra qualche giorno, ci sarà anche Andrea come speaker, ci sarò anch'io, quindi ci vediamo là sicuramente. E tutto qua, insomma. Basta, quindi ci vediamo presto, anche con te, Enos, da qualche parte. Poi ci vediamo. Oggi Andrea ha fatto il Cloud Champion.
Esatto.
Io settimana... Aspetta, non questo. La prossima... No, fra 2, perché adesso ho perso il senso del tempo. Fra 2 ho un altro appuntamento... Fra 2? No, la prossima settimana ho un altro appuntamento con... sì, lo so che basta il livello dell'evento. Ho un altro appuntamento con Ama, con last meeting e poi via. Quindi iscrivetevi al canale di UG.NET, dove siete adesso, fate un bel iscrivi per avere live e tutto il resto, perché soprattutto quando non c'è Andrea dovete iscriverci e seguirci, perché siamo Ienos, che siamo anche dei bei ragazzi, oltre a sapere più cose di Andrea. Tanto oggi possiamo prendere, tanto è solo in chat, Andrea non ci può offendere. Quindi ragazzi vi saluto, che io devo andare anch'io a cena, e anche te, no, te non cenerai alle 8:30, sei a Milano, io sono in Svizzera, già sono in ritardo.
Adesso comincerò a pensare cosa voglio stasera.
Va bene a tutti, grazie di averci seguito anche oggi, anche faccio compagnia con la chat e tutto. La registrazione comunque rimane, quindi se volete farvi del male potete anche vederlo prima di andare a letto, quello che vi siete persi. E alla prossima, ciao a tutti.
Ciao a tutti.